The way that we like to think about that is if it enables somebody to make a decision. The most wonderful year, I spent several months hiking
Definitely.
the Pacific Crest Trail. I went to India, I went to Europe. It was just fantastic.
Rediscovering yourself.
Yes, I did.
What are the questions that they really need to tackle to really dig deep and try to get the right insights, strike the conversation?
This is a very, very good question.
Okay, so Dr. Patrina, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the MSL Dialogue. This is the third session of the MSL Dialogue that's directed to all the medical affairs associates and also the people who are passionate about medical affairs and want to join. So it's very great to have you with us today. So thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say that this is really exciting for me because I've been a big fan of Sharif's for a really long time. And so now I get to officially meet him, and I'm so honored to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, Dr. Patrina. Thank you very much. I've always, been passionate about following your posts and where you go, and it's very great to host you today. And I think so for people in medical affairs like myself, they know you because you're a big name in medical affairs.
Oh my God,
I
that's
know
great.
personally with your background coming from, science and Yale University, etc., and then switching on to medical affairs. I think if you can just give the people who's listening to the podcast a little bit about your background and how you actually took that jump to become a strategic leader in medical affairs.
Sharif, do you want me to start at the very beginning, how I grew up in Alaska?
I think that would be very resonating with a lot of people.
It always, I always make a joke that it's a really good bar conversation too. Like if you're in a bar, you can tell people you're from Alaska, and then it's really exciting. But
It's
um,
getting exciting.
yeah, we can save all the bear stories for later. I have a lot of them, but I think I did have a common path for a lot of people where you don't really know exactly what you want to do. And I got probably all the way up into my late 30s by people suggesting that I do things. And so I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. When I was an undergrad, I got a prestigious NIH award. And every year that you took the award, you had to go and work at the NIH. So after I got my undergrad, I went to the NIH. I met this really cool postdoc and we became friends and we hung out all the time and we did stuff. And he said, Patrina, you know what you should do? You should go get your PhD from the biggest name school you can.
Hmm.
And just being like a young 22-year-old, I said, that's a great idea. And so I
Quite
did.
overwhelming.
Yeah, I will. I got into Yale. I went to Yale. I got a PhD. It's
Wow.
technically in chemistry, but I worked in a cell biology lab and studied intracellular trafficking at the Golgi apparatus. And during that time, because I was in a cell biology lab, one of the top lab techniques that we used was microscopy. So I became a
Hmm.
microscopist and spent hours and hours in the dark basement, imaging cells essentially. When I was coming up to the end of my PhD, I had decided that I didn't want to be in academia. I didn't want to become a professor. What I did from there is the next thing where I just followed what somebody else said. I had met what were called field application scientists from companies
Hmm.
in the lab. And I was like, oh, I'll become one of those. So I ended up becoming a
It
field
resonated.
application scientist for GE Healthcare, and I focused on one of their high-end microscopes, one of their super resolution
Hmm.
microscopes. I spent about 5 years doing that, and the reason that I am emphasizing this is that that was a traveling field job.
Yeah.
So I was not an MSL. I didn't meet doctors and that sort of thing. But what I did was cover North America. And for a while, I covered North America and Europe. And I went
Oh my
to,
God.
yeah, it was,
That's a
I
lot
know
of
what,
traveling.
I I know what it's like to be on the road, guys. Um, I met academic research labs and also pharma companies that would use our product. And I did all of the pre and post sales support. I was the one giving the scientific talks. I was the one going to conferences. So it's very similar to an MSL, but not a true MSL. And now in my role at MSL Mastery, I do really pull from a lot of that experience because there are a lot of similarities.
Sure.
Okay, I feel like I'm taking a long time, so I'm going to speed this up. But I went to a startup. The startup didn't work, and then I found myself unemployed. And interestingly, a guy that I knew that worked at LinkedIn had recommended me to an MSL Insights software company. So I was looking for a job, and out of the blue, somebody reached out to me. And that's
Wow, that's very lucky.
isn't it crazy? It is so crazy. And I didn't even know what an MSL was. I didn't even know what medical affairs was, but I
Oh my God.
took this job. So my first job was building MSL insights processes on the vendor side of things. And so that
Okay, so
was it's
the other side of the table.
yeah, exactly. And that was 8 years ago. And since then, I have worked in medical affairs strategy. I did KOL data. I got laid off from that. And then I took a year off and I had the most wonderful year. I spent several months hiking
Definitely.
the Pacific Crest Trail. I went to India. I went to Europe. It was just fantastic.
Rediscovering yourself.
Yes, I did. I've always wanted to do a long distance hike, and you can't be like, "Hey guys, hey boss, I'm going to spend 6 months hiking. I'll be back."
Yeah,
Right? Like there, and
yeah,
so
feel free to reach out if you need
yeah,
anything.
yeah, like no problem. You can take care of my customers and all of that stuff. Like, and actually, it was my husband's idea when I got laid off. He was like, "You've always wanted to do that. Why don't you
This
go
is the
do it?"
chance.
Yeah, and that was
Definitely.
just, gosh, such an amazing year for me. Okay, but now I'm circling to where we are now.
Yeah, where
When
we are at the
when I
moment.
got back, I said, "Okay, what do I want to do?" And I'm a content creator at heart. Sharif, as you know, you've followed me for a
Yeah.
long time. I love
Yes.
writing and I love producing content. So I partnered with a retired pharma executive and we made an MSL Insights course. The course did pretty well, but what was more interesting about this was that pharma companies started reaching out for training. And so that has what led me to partner with Sarah Snyder on MSL Mastery. And I'm
Yeah.
so incredibly proud of what
There is
we
a guru.
yes,
Definitely.
I can't even believe what we've accomplished in the last year. And now as co-CEO at MSL Mastery, we specialize in upskilling MSLs. We're trying to call them power skills now, not
Mm-hmm.
soft skills,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't
100%.
do, we don't do the scientific training, but we do tons of insights training, storytelling training,
Mhm.
KOL access, and my favorite AI training. We do tons and tons of AI
Yeah,
training.
definitely. And
Yeah.
it's much needed at the moment.
Okay, now we're like 20 minutes into the podcast and I'm finally done.
But you've summed it all up, which is great because there are a lot of things even related to the trainings and the AIs. Of course, we'll touch base on that. But initially, you've had a roller coaster journey in your career,
I
which is
call it a
very inspiring.
spaghetti ball, actually.
Yeah,
Like it's like a spaghetti
makes
ball.
more sense. Makes
Okay.
more sense.
Yeah.
Makes more sense. But this is great because this is inspiring to a lot of people. I think a lot of people watching the podcast would resonate by
I
the
hope so.
part where you feel, yeah, I've stopped here. I don't know what I'm doing, or this is not what I want to do. I want to do something else. And this is very inspirational. But I think one of the questions that always runs around their minds, let's say, is to have that business acumen. I know from a lot of your posts, you've always talked about business acumen, how it's very important, etc. If I put myself in the shoes of someone who was in academia, just like you, so someone who
Yeah.
was in academia and wants to take that leap of faith into the pharma industry or corporate world, etc. What do you think was the biggest like mindset shift or culture shock that you felt? And what's your advice on that?
Okay, I have a story. When I got my first industry job, I had no idea, no clue. Just like you said, Sharif, right? You don't understand how business works with an academic
Yeah.
background, right? It's not something that's covered in your everyday PhD work or your normal
Mhm.
work. So it took me 2 years to even recognize and realize that I was in the commercial side of the organization and how that fit. into the overall world of business. And finally, it started clicking for me. And I would highly recommend that, especially medical affairs people, because there's a bit of a negative attitude around sales, is to read an older book now. It's from 2012, I believe, and it's called To
Hmm.
Sell is Human by Daniel
Hmm.
Pink. Have you read it, Sharif?
I've read the abstract. I'm too
Okay.
bad I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read the
Yeah,
abstract.
yeah. You didn't know you were going to get quizzed on this today, so
No,
you didn't have time to
not
prepare.
at all.
um,
But at
and
least I read the abstract.
yeah, it's what was really groundbreaking for me at that time because I had that typical negative attitude around sales and that it's a very bad thing. And what Daniel Pink says in that book is that everybody is selling, no matter if you are a traditional salesperson or you're an
Yeah.
engineer or you're an MSL. And I think the shift for me was in my mindset around it, that it's not a four-letter word, that it's not something bad. And so I think grasping that will help MSLs and medical affairs folks get more of a business acumen mindset, and that will translate into their everyday work. What do you think, Sharif?
I think so because I think we're all driven by emotions anyway. So all our decisions are always done by emotions. And just like you said, we're always selling something. So you're selling an idea, you're selling a product, you're selling a project, whatever it is, you're always selling. So yeah, it's when you put that in the mindset, it does drive your business acumen as an MSL that you know how to target your KOLs and manage them effectively. So I do agree with that. And stemming from this, you have a very important post where you've mentioned that medical affairs should drive strategy. They shouldn't just support it. And of course, this resonates or makes sense with how medical affairs as a function has changed over the years. So being a traditional supportive function to now being a strategic uh, business driver, like you always mention. But how, when you boil this down to the MSL level,
Yeah.
how do you define the next generation MSL?
So from the strategy perspective, because there's a lot of layers here, Sharif.
Hmm.
We could go a
Yeah.
lot of different ways from strategy.
I think from strategy or
Yeah.
more also from the skills part. So
Okay,
how
strategy and
would the
skills.
new MSL fit now in the organization
I
that
have to write
wasn't there before?
I have to write notes because I always forget. Like I'm trying to listen and then I always
Mhm.
forget. From the strategy perspective, and this is something we train on all the time at MSL Mastery. One of our values is that Sarah and I always say this, we're not raising or training box checker MSLs. Like MSLs that go through, for example, get the list, get the KOL list, and they just work the list from top to bottom. That is not business. That is exactly what business acumen is not. And that is
Mhm.
not being strategic. So if we back out of that and think about what that means, it means knowing what you're doing and why, and importantly, tying that up to the business and medical objectives. That
Yeah.
should be your North Star, and that should be guiding everything you do. So I'll give it
Mhm.
a tangible example, and I'm sure you can relate to this. When you have your list of KOLs, it's not something you just check off, right? You need to be
Sure.
applying thought to it on who you're
Mhm.
going to and why. I don't know with the teams you work with, Sharif, but many of the teams we work with have very large KOL panel sizes. So the
Yes.
biggest we've seen is 150, right? If you
Ooh.
are
Wow.
literally 150. And so if you have this huge list of 150 people, you cannot just work the list from top to bottom. You need to apply some thought
Sure.
and strategy to who you're targeting and why. And that should be driven by the medical objectives.
100% stretching. And they also manage their energy and manage their tools because definitely they'll need omni-channel and things like that for these people.
I heard a medical excellence person say that they need to know how to manage themselves as a resource. And I really like that,
Very,
right? Like you're
yeah,
only one single person, oftentimes covering a large territory. So
$100.
if you guys know the we call it the middle of the US. So it's all those flyover states in the middle. Oftentimes an MSL will have 7 to 15 large states that they have to cover. And that's a lot of travel. And you need to be really strategic about where you're going and
Where
why.
you're going.
and also maximizing the time, right? Like if you're going to fly all the way to Wisconsin, you want to try to make sure you can meet as much of your high priority stakeholders or KOLs as you can.
Definitely. Because you don't want to be stranded there if there's a snowstorm or something that you
Oh my
can't fly
God.
back and you're missing all the others back home.
Oh yeah,
So yeah,
that's the worst. Yeah.
it's the worst. It's the worst. Well, we have sandstorms at our
That's what I was
end,
gonna
but
say.
it's the
I was
same.
like,
It's the
yeah,
same.
sandstorm, snowstorm, weather problems.
It is definitely, and I resonate with you, especially my recent team. Some of them are covering multiple countries. I mean, my previous employer, that wasn't the case. Each MSL had just one country, so there might be different cities within the country. But
Yeah,
when it's multiple countries as well, it's much harder. They really need to do that because add on that time zone differences, add on that cultural considerations of the
cultural,
different
yes.
countries. It's crazy. So they, yeah, manage themselves. I wrote that down because that's a very nice word. I'll start using that with my
You can
team as well.
you can steal it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can steal it. Thank you very much. And along the stealing, so there's something else I want to steal as well. So I know, of course, you and Sarah and in the MSL Mastery, you have a lot of tailored trainings that you provide for MSLs or corporates as well. And we'll get to that maybe later on. But something I want to steal, also relevant to people who want to just start their MSL career or they did just start their MSL career. Some of the people I see, and this is genuine problem, they are very brilliant on the level of science.
Oh
So
yeah,
they're
yeah.
very good at extrapolating the science, etc. But they just can't show their value. So, like
Mhm.
you said, they work through their MSL list. They're very good at doing that. But then the corporate level leadership team, the other side, whatever you want to call it, they really can't see the tangible value of that. So,
Mhm.
I know your trainings have a solution for that, but what
I
guidance
wish
would
it's
you
not
give
that
these people?
easy. I
It's
wish,
not
but
that easy. I know.
yeah.
So, what's usually the missing link? What's the something that you tell them how to link their brilliance in science to really showing value?
This is, I feel really strongly about this, and I'm so glad we're talking about it because I would love to know what you think as well. It all, showing value, all comes down to relationship building and communication. You have
Hmm.
to be able to have strong enough relationships so that you can communicate with them and show that value. We always say, you can have the best metrics in the world. You can have the best KPIs in the world. Like maybe you're tracking ICD-10 codes and you can show that doctors' behavior has changed. But if your executive leadership or your sales commercial counterparts won't listen to you, it doesn't matter, right? If you don't have that relationship to be able to go and talk to them and say, hey, look at all these great things we did. This is how it helped you. It doesn't matter. And I feel like this is where a lot of medical affairs people are stuck. There's a lot of struggle right now in these cross-functional partnerships and relationships. What do you think, Sharif?
I think the same, and I also think I'll relate to what you said in the previous question. I think it all boils down back down to strategy. So I think if the MSL has that business acumen, they know what our medical objectives are, and then how their work relates to this, then they can always relate back what they're doing in their everyday job to what we really need back in the office. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's also something that really makes a
Yeah.
difference because if, like you said, if they're just working through the list, they're visiting people, they're saying out messages, they're showing presentations, but they really don't know what the end in mind is,
Yeah.
sometimes they just lose focus or they really can't show what they're doing. So that's very important.
Would I
And I,
have a
I think,
couple? Oh, go ahead. Finish.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no. Ladies first.
I was going to say yes, and understanding. So, yes, and to the keeping the end in mind, which are the medical objectives. I think there's also a huge gap in understanding other functions and
Yeah.
understanding what they do. And I'll give you an example. We have I was going to say fun workshop on understanding your stakeholders' needs. And we do this in both our KOL access training, but also in our cross functional collaboration training. We have a really simple worksheet where we work through what are your sales counterpart, your market access counterpart, whoever it might be, what is keeping them up at night and what is slowing them down during the day. And Sharif, you should see how much MSLs get caught up on this. They have no idea. And so I think to your
Oh,
point, yes, we have the medical objectives and we should all be marching towards those, but you have to understand the needs of internal stakeholders as
of the
well.
others.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're all marching in the same direction.
yeah. And then I have a
That's very,
follow-up
very nice.
question for you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's important to understand the medical objectives. There appears to be a big gap there, though. A lot of
Hmm.
MSLs struggle to understand what the actual medical objectives are and use them
Yep.
to drive their everyday work, their daily day-to-day work. When you
Definitely.
talk to leaders, leaders think, oh, it's so clear. The medical objectives are just crystal clear. It's not, though. Like,
It's
why?
not. It's not.
Yeah, what? Go ahead. Yeah.
I always, I'm always on the MSL side in that level. And I think, like you said, they're not clear. Usually they're not clear. The point is they're clear in the minds of the leadership because they
Yes.
know the rest of the story. So they know the whole story, and then that's the missing part. And then they put that missing part out to the MSLs as a sort of medical objectives. And then it doesn't make sense to the MSL. And I think that's part of also
Mm,
compounding the problem why MSLs can't really show their value in that part. When they know the whole story, so I think as a leadership team, you really need to let out some, you have to rely on the maturity of the people, of course, but you have
yeah.
to let out a little bit of the story. So the people working on the ground really need to know, why are we doing this? Like, there's no point telling them, get us insights about so and so market, because the leadership know that we're going to acquire a company, for example, and we
Mm-hmm.
need to get
Oh, I
insights on it.
see.
And then the MSLs are like, why are we getting insights on dyslipidemia when we don't have a dyslipidemia product and we don't have one in
Mm-hmm.
the pipeline? So that doesn't make sense. But when they do get a little bit of the story, even just a tinge of it, then maybe it does make sense, and you
Yeah.
do get better outcomes, of course.
So I thought you were going to say like the kind of more background, but you're saying future directions. You think MSLs need to know a little bit more of future directions.
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes I feel they really need to be involved because you're in the end you're talking about ownership. So if they feel
Mm,
the
yeah, yeah,
ownership to the medical objectives and the strategy, then you're sure they'll execute on a better level. But
yeah,
if you
yeah.
just tell them to just go and do visits, that doesn't work.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm writing down
Yeah.
notes here, guys, of things that I'm going to steal from Sharif because he owes me with the stuff that he's going to steal.
Feel
But
free, feel free.
yeah,
Yeah, I do.
um,
I do. I'm seeing a lot already.
one thing I've noticed on this topic, and this it led to us inventing a new training on it, is the MSLs oftentimes do not understand the history of a product or the history of a company. So, why did they go into this therapeutic area? Why did the
Mhm.
company develop this drug? What was happening at the market at that time? Sharif, do you have that same feeling?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah.
do, and I think it's very, very important to know that.
Yeah.
I echo
So,
you on that.
we I had a light bulb moment in a storytelling training. We had somehow asked something like, why did your company go into this space? And it was completely crickets. Like nobody said anything. And this was like 14 MSLs or so. And not all of them were new. So then the medical director spoke up. Right. And the medical director, being the strategy person, was like, blah, 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 blah. Like she knew every single
It's
thing.
very clear.
Yeah, she was like, guys, we did this, we did that. That's why we did this trial. That's why we did this endpoint. But that led us to develop a new workshop that we call it, I think it's a great name. I made it up. So obviously I'm biased, but we call it
Then it's great.
we call it Origins Lab. And so we work through a few different things. Why that patient population? Why
Mm,
that timing? And oh gosh, there's one more, and I'm totally blanking on it. There's why those endpoints? And it's really interesting. We've
that's
done
very, very
this
important.
workshop several times, and at one team they said, "Oh, well, we acquired the product, so we don't need to know this." And I was like, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh my God, Lord."
You
And
put
then
them in the naughty corner.
yeah, well, the VP of medical affairs was there, and he was like, "Actually, guys, like, but it's an important gap." So I hope your listeners
Definitely.
today are inspired to really understand the history of that product and that TA, right? It is a going back to the where we started with business acumen. There is a strategic reason that your company decided to invest sometimes
Definitely.
billions of dollars into the development of a drug. What was happening at that time and
At
why?
that moment.
also from a storytelling perspective and building trust with KOLs and external customers, they like to know that kind of stuff, right? It helps you build
Definitely.
your story as well. So yeah, now you got me started.
It
Like now I'm
resonates. It
not gonna
resonates.
shut
No,
up.
but
Yeah.
it's definitely very, very, very interesting because sometimes, a lot of MSLs struggle to really have a story to build up their
Mhm.
connection with the KOL so they can actually start getting insights because, you
Exactly.
can't just knock the door and say, "Hey, give me insights." It's
Yeah.
more of a flowy conversation. So you should have a starting story to start that conversation.
Yeah, I have a funny
Very
side
good.
story for you. We were doing a insights training, and I forget the question. We were asking like how they get insights, right? And exactly to your
Hmm.
point, Sharif, we've heard from tons of MSLs. It takes a long time to build the relationship to actually
Definitely.
get the insights. I know the medical leaders listening are cringing right now, but I think it's a fact. And so one senior MSL said with his KOLs that he has a really good relationship with, that he's known for a really long time, he said he goes into their office and says, "Hey, can you give me any insights?" And like I died laughing. I was like, does it work? Do they give you insights? He was like, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
But I was
But
like,
that's still after years, after a
yeah,
couple of
yeah,
years.
exactly. I just thought that was hilarious. I was like,
It
wow,
is.
this guy has confidence.
It is. It is. That's great. But yeah, talking about insights, this is something very important. And I think this is all a hassle between MSLs and some medical leaders. So coming from your background, building on your background, and you've sat on the other side of the table for the companies that actually, skim through these insights and create reports, etc. How based on your experience, how would you inform people of the difference between a real insight or field data and some just random observation or general observation? What's the
Uh,
difference between them? How do you
I
really
could go on.
define an insight?
Yeah. How much time do we have? What time is it? All right, we're
And
gonna need a lot of time
the
on this.
rest of the rest of
Yeah.
the of the webs.
It's such a tricky thing. And that's one thing that we really try to teach, and I'm sure you do as well. What is an insight at one point in time might not be an insight at another point in time. And so there's so many levels to this. Having that deep understanding of the strategy and the why helps you understand why they are asking the MSL to go gather this information. But getting back to your original question on what is the difference between an observation or a meeting note and an insight? The way that we like to think about that is if it enables somebody to make a decision. And so we don't really like to use the word actionable. Have you noticed how
Actionable
sometimes
insights.
that gets people's hackles up? They're like, oh, sometimes you don't take an action, right? Like I'm sure you've heard that. And so it's true because an insight, a true business insight can sometimes mean you stop taking action, right? You stop
Yeah,
pursuing something. So we
correct.
think about this in terms of if it enables a decision or not. And that requires a few different components. It needs to have all the appropriate context. It needs to have the
Mhm.
rationale behind the thinking of the provider or the HCP or the KOL. And it also needs to have some kind of implication in it. And if it doesn't contain those things, it's probably not quite an insight yet. But it's also really important for MSLs to learn to distinguish what is important for them versus what is important for the company. Because these are
Yeah,
two very different things. And I'm sure you've seen this as
definitely.
well. And it's kind of a product of how the CRM is set up because
Hmm.
MSLs don't always have a good spot to store their meeting notes versus their
Right.
insight. So I think it's kind of a trickle down effect of that because when you are building the relationship and you're trying to become besties with this doctor,
Hmm.
you need to keep track of your notes. And so trying to
Definitely.
think about if you put in your insight as an insight that their dog's name is Scooby, right, this is obviously going to upset your leadership because this is important for you, but this is not going to help,
Not important for the company.
yeah, drive the medical objective. So Sharif, how do you talk about this to your
I
team?
I think this is very important. I resonate on what you say. I try to boil it down a little simpler because some of the team members that I have are a little junior in multiple companies that I've worked in. They're usually juniors. So what I try to do is try to think of the four important words. So the what, the
Mm.
who, the why, and the when.
Yeah, the four
So, or the
W's. Yeah.
what. Yeah. So when you channel their energy into these four buckets, it makes them a little bit easier for them to formulate an insight. Because when one of them is missing, then it's of no use. There's nothing we can do about it. But when they work on having all the four buckets filled with something, then usually it's quite interesting. And just yesterday, I had one of my junior team members in the team. She wrote an insight that was extremely solid. It was exemplary. So it was so good that I actually took a screenshot of it and I put it on our team's WhatsApp group. I said, "Hey guys, this is an ideal insight. If you want to copy her in all your work later on, please do so." So
Did you
it was
add
very, very
hearts?
interesting.
Like add
Yeah.
hearts onto it? Yeah.
The girls in the teams took the hearts part. They put
Yeah.
a lot of hearts. But yeah, it was very interesting because she'd filled all the four buckets. She said
Yeah.
who, what, when, why, and then she even followed up with a sentence of what she plans to do next in her
Oh, the
next visits
invitation.
and
Yeah.
what she really needs to do. That's just perfect. Yeah.
Sharif, I was talking to a VP of medical affairs yesterday, and he said that he does a similar thing. It was funny though, when he said the four W's, he had how in there. And I was like, hey, that's not a W
Wait, that
word.
doesn't a W,
Fine.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it just fits in.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, you know what I mean? I was like, I know.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's important that our MSLs know. But that's very
Yeah.
good. So talking about, MSLs and insights, etc. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of insights and you've analyzed a lot of insights, especially being a VP at some time of point in your career as well. What do you think is the biggest mistake that MSLs do when they do write insights on the system?
I'm going to boil it down to something simple like you did with the four W's. If you, as an MSL, can always remember that the people reading these insights were not in the meeting with you, I think that will help you write better insights. And don't assume that everybody knows what you know. And I
Yeah.
see this a lot in insights training. They'll be like, I mean, we'll look at the insight. It's clearly incomplete. Like it's incomplete. There's multiple
You don't
ways
even
to,
complete the sentence. Yeah.
yeah, there's multiple ways to interpret it. And so then when it lands on the desk of leadership, they're like, what in the heck is this? And so remembering that they were not in that meeting with you and they also might not be as knowledgeable as you. I know I've noticed a lot of MSLs always assume that insights go to medical directors, and they do, but they also go
They do.
elsewhere. And
Definitely.
not like cross-functional partners. And I mean, I don't want to get into the compliance stuff, but there are people that are potentially reading your insight that are not therapeutic area experts. And it is not
Hmm.
automatically assumed that they know as much as you do. And I think this really helps. And we have a fun little activity that we do in our insights training about making them CEO ready. So we play a game where, like, how would you feel if your insight landed on the desk of the CEO? Right? Would you be proud or not? And I think this perspective helps them do that thing we were mentioning earlier, which is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Sure.
What's your
This is very,
favorite?
very important. I
Yeah.
think I think that's very important, and I think I do encourage people also to follow your social media accounts on related to this, and especially the MSL Mastery, because I know you spend a lot of time talking about insight gathering and showing ROI, showing value, etc. I'm a big fan of that because I always aspire to MSLs to show their real value to the cross-functional teams, and I think having the right insight in place is definitely a starting point for this. If you do have a right insight that's really valuable, like you said, that will enable marketing, clinical development, evidence generation, market access to
Yes.
actually take a decision based on your insight, then this is the real value that you are providing
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
to the company.
Yeah, this is something that we always teach, especially newer MSLs. There's no Google or Chat GPT to understand what doctors think and how they
Hmm.
make treatment decisions. And if you can
Definitely.
bring that information back into the company, that's your value. So exactly what you're saying, Sharif, think of it like competitive intelligence, right? There's no way we can't be like, hey, ChatGPT, how do cardiologists follow guidelines,
Risk
right? Like,
guidelines.
yeah, it's
Does the
just not there.
majority like beta blockers or not?
Yeah, it's like so realizing that you're providing that information that there's no other way to get, that's your value. And then making sure
100%.
that it's complete. We had a MSL lead on a training have a really great analogy. He said that you want to think of your insight like your child and you want it to grow up to be big and strong. And I was like, I thought that was so
I
hilarious.
love the analogy.
Yeah, like give it everything. You got to feed it and like give it the love that it needs so that it grows up to be big and
It grows
strong.
out to be something.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's a very nice thing.
Yeah.
I think it will strike the interest of people listening to the podcast at the moment because if there's someone who's sitting right now listening to this and they're in the waiting area, let's say, and they're going to enter to a visit to the next KOL, with the business day starting now in the USA. So what will be your piece of advice to them? So what are the questions that they really need to tackle to really dig deep and try to get the right insights, strike the conversation?
This is a very, very good question and a very challenging question as well. When MSLs, and you know this perfectly well, are sitting in that meeting and they are discussing, there is extremely high cognitive load happening on
Hmm.
this MSL. They've got to think about what they talked about, what they're going to talk about, the data. They've got to make sure they remember it all. Maybe there will be a question that comes in. They got meetings coming up, they got a Congress, it's so much stuff going on. So this load on the brain is very, very heavy. And what I would highly recommend is obviously you can't do this in the moment, so this is not really answering your question, but getting yourself familiar with potential triggers, things
Hmm.
that the HCP or KOL will do in the meeting or say in the meeting that gets your insights radar pinging. Right. So
Hmm.
if they say X, Y, and Z, you know that you're on the edge of an insight. And there is no particular secret sauce on this because it's so dependent on the TA and the
Dependent on the
company
person. Yeah,
strategy. So I would highly recommend as a team, and especially if you're a newer MSL and working with senior MSLs, the senior MSLs do this naturally. They
they
don't
know
even
it.
realize,
Yeah,
yeah, they don't even realize it. They're like, oh, if the doctor does this, I know there's high pressure situations because if you're
definitely,
not prepared ahead of time, there's too much going on. Your brain just can't handle it, right? You just have, you're not
definitely.
a robot, right? You just have one poor human brain. That's it.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And you only have 10 minutes
Yeah, exactly. So you
at
need to,
at the most.
yeah, you need to be on the ball. And so it's not just words, like that's really important, right? Pay attention to the questions they ask, but it's their body language as well.
Definitely.
When do they
Definitely.
light up? When are they hesitant? Right? When do they get annoyed? That is telling you something. And that is telling you something about how they think and why. So being able to recognize those signals, I heard somebody say it the other day as following the energy, and I love
Hmm.
that. Like, what's the energy? Like, where is their, like, what are they avoiding? What are they excited about? This will tell you a lot about
Very
how they
important.
think, because ultimately, that's what an insight should reveal. It should reveal
100%.
how they think and why and how they make decisions.
Definitely, definitely. And that's what it's all about. I think some of the times when I talk to my teams, I always tell them it's very important to distinguish the thinking preference of a KOL versus their communication preference. Because
Yeah.
sometimes they could be very warm and welcoming, etc. So you feel they are an emotional KOL. So you start talking to them in an emotional way or starting to trigger their emotions versus patient profiles, etc. While in reality, their thinking preference is totally data oriented. So they're purely towards the data. Just tell me
Mhm.
this is 30%, this is 35%, I'll go with the
Key
35.
values.
That's
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
etc. So they're so data oriented. Others are, regardless of the examples, it's just the point is you really need to distinguish between their communication preference and their thinking preference, which resonates with what you're saying. When you sit with them and you know their energy, you know how they take decisions, you've seen them in different situations, then you know, yes, this is genuinely and what they're feeling or they're thinking. That's their insight. And And that resonates with what you said in the beginning. So insights do take a long time to actually be formulated. It's not, it's very hard to get an insight on the second visit or the first visit. It's, you
It can't be
definitely
like,
need 3 or 4.
why do you use these guidelines, right? Like it's just can't like it's not natural. Like a human's not going to
It's not
open up.
natural. It's not
Yeah,
an interrogation. The
exactly.
the more having a flowy conversation, the better insights you'll have. When it's more of an interrogation, so why'd you do this? And I write, why'd you do that? And I write, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's a
And
turn off for most of the doctors.
I'm laughing because I feel so bad for some new MSLs, right? They really want to do a good job, and then sometimes the company will release mountains of kicks, key insight questions,
Yeah.
key insight topics. Sometimes they're called listening priorities or insights themes. But we were doing a training for a team in January, and I think they had 13 categories, and each category had several questions. And yeah, so you think of the pressure on the MSLs as well, because they want to do a good job and they want to meet their metrics.
Definitely.
And so this is me telling the leaders that are listening, like, think of the cognitive load and what you're already
Yeah,
asking of the MSL. And, as someone that worked on insights processes for a long time and has been in a
definitely.
lot of arguments about how many questions you should have, how many kicks, I can tell you
Yeah,
100% that only the top three are going to get the data that you want.
definitely.
Boil that down. Your MSLs are going to be happier and your data is going to be cleaner.
It's going to be better quality.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice. So, Patrina, let me jump then to another topic. And I think this topic is very close to your heart, despite that it's, something in pharma that a lot of people are either too excited about or too terrified from. There's no
Mm,
in the middle.
yeah.
And that's, of course, that's artificial intelligence. And so using AI, you are the guru of using AI in medical affairs. And it's a very good chance to have you here today. So that's why I wanted to really get your insight on this. So how do you see AI as an enabler to MSLs to create the next generation MSLs rather than replacing them, which is the fear of many MSLs out there?
Yeah, it's something worth thinking about. And obviously, I think that most people in medical affairs have been thinking very deeply about. And
Yeah,
when we see things like Claude Cowork and OpenClaw and these agents that can really take action, you have to start questioning what value is an MSL bringing, right? What are they
sure.
doing that OpenClaw cannot do,
Cannot.
right? Yeah, so when we start, it's really starting to distinguish. And this circles back to something we talked about in the beginning. It's about the business acumen and the strategic thinking. And so, one thing that we really pull through in our insights training is how to make AI or how to use AI, excuse me,
Yeah.
to be more strategic. If you are
Mm.
using AI to draft your emails, that's baby stuff, right? That's like, it's one.
Or translate a word into another language.
Yeah, if you're using it like Google, you're missing out for sure. But it's right. When going back to that email example, people can tell, right? Humans have spidey sense for AI now. And so
Definitely.
they can tell you drafted it. So, or just use the AI to draft it and you copy it and pasted it. It's obvious. So if you're using AI at that level, those are the type of folks that their jobs are at risk. But on the flip side,
Definitely.
if you are using AI to boost your strategic thinking and help you be more strategic, that's something OpenClaw cannot do, right? That is something
Mhm.
Claude Cowork cannot do. So I'll give you a very tangible example of this. I'm not against drafting emails with AI, and I know I just
Yeah,
said that
definitely.
it's baby stuff. You still have to go in there and you have to look at it and you have to think about it and you have to make sure it sounds like you and you have to make sure that you're meeting your recipient's needs. An example of more strategically using AI would be something like, help me rewrite the subject line to make sure it gets opened, right? So the
Hmm.
difference is not draft this email for me. It's help me make sure I get access to my KWell or help me make sure we're pulling this project through internally by
Hmm.
making sure the subject line is more strategic. Because if your email doesn't even get opened, you're not going to have any impact. So it's it's
Definitely.
it's a nuance there, but I would say learning to use AI to help boost your thinking and
Hmm.
be more strategic is what's going to help you stay ahead and also not get replaced by OpenClaw.
Definitely, because that's some of the questions that I get from a lot of my team members and some other MSLs, aspiring MSLs everywhere. They're always having that fear and they're always looking for examples. So you've given an example also, and then maybe you can also help them with another example because sometimes they feel they're overwhelmed, they're too
Yeah.
busy, they don't have enough
Oh yeah.
time, they have a lot of challenges in access to KOLs, etc. But they really don't know how AI can help them
Got it. Yeah.
overcome these challenges.
I got a great one. I'm writing it down so I don't forget it.
Shoot
Are you
it then.
ready?
Shoot it
Yeah.
at them at the moment.
Yeah. If you have a closed AI system, which nowadays most pharma companies do,
Most companies. Yeah.
what closed means is that you are able to use company information in the AI tool. And so, as you mentioned, most companies have this with Copilot. That's what most companies are using. You
Hmm.
can, as an MSL, help AI, or sorry, use AI to help you with territory planning. So, what you can
Hmm.
do, for example, is put in your medical objectives, or it might already be able to pull your medical objectives and then help you prioritize that
Hmm.
list. If we circle back to the beginning of the call, right, where we're talking about, oh, you can't be strategic if you just work the list, you can, by having AI look at your medical objectives and then asking it to help you prioritize, that's a step you can take to use AI to boost your thinking. Right.
Hmm.
So instead of you being like, gosh, this is the medical
Who
objective,
will I visit next?
who will I visit? What should I do? Like, you can also, man, we've got some MSLs that are just rocking at this. You can even have it look at your calendar and help you. It can see, oh, I'm going here. Who else should I talk to? Because it
Hmm.
knows the strategy and it knows your KOL list. So things like that. So, not what is the best.
Let's say, suggest something to do.
Yeah, and you still need, so this is can be a huge time saving move because it's at, what are people calling it? Fresh start, right? So instead
Hmm.
of you having to think from scratch when you're tired, you just had a ton of meetings, you've been on the road a lot, you have something to react to. So you still need to think about it and apply your strategic thinking, but it gives you a place to start from.
And that's very good. But I think maybe the majority of big pharma companies do have their own AI systems, like you said, so it's much easier. But I'm thinking
I got
more
another one.
of, let's
Yeah.
say, oh, that's good. We'll jump
Yeah.
to that then.
Okay.
I'm thinking more of the, I don't want to say underprivileged, but let's say the MSLs who are working for middle-sized companies or working for local companies or working
Yeah.
on project basis, for example. These guys maybe they don't have that access
Yeah.
except to the normal chat GPT, etc. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what's your advice to these people so they can actually, what are the boundaries or the golden
Yeah.
rules that they can
So
use AI, but without, exposing their company data?
one thing that an MSL can do that does not require a closed AI system is thinking more strategically about the publication or a
Hmm.
publication and how
Hmm.
this applies to the healthcare landscape. So
That's
obviously you
perfect
still need to
example.
read that publication, but one of the
Definitely.
best performing prompts I have on my blog is schedule chat GPT scheduled tasks for strategic literature reviews. And so what most companies provide you is a list of publications that are important for the TA, but they don't tell you why it's important. And that's where you can start using AI. And so you can say,
Hmm.
oh, given this TA, why might this be important? You can ask what will be a doctor's objections, what will be potential questions, what are insights questions I could ask to lead to insights,
Hmm.
etc. So I think leveling up the publication is a really easy way for anybody with any access to an AI tool.
That's amazing. I love the example. It didn't pop up in my mind, but yeah, I'll be using that with my teams as well
Oh
because
yeah,
it's very,
yeah.
very important. It's very, very important to really know what's happening in the whole therapy area, not just what's happening with our product on its own. So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's amazing. And I think leveraging, massive amounts of data and claims, etc., and putting them down into something that's more structured is very, very important because it will also help MSLs, to understand the therapy area, understand different clinical trials, look at underserved patients because sometimes, we
Mhm.
have that in many therapy areas where there are patients that are underrepresented in different clinical trials, and how we can actually work to include those, etc. So I think,
Exactly.
what are your thoughts on this? Do you think also MSLs really need to dig that deep and be like data analysts, besides being just scientists?
I think that that's one of the most exciting things about AI is that it allows them to start looking across data sources. We talked about cognitive load before, and it's you can only handle so many things in your brain at once. And
Yeah.
so helping using AI to help you get trends across papers, using a tool, a free tool like Notebook LM, where you can load multiple papers and then do the mind map on it, like that's
hmm
great. It gives you a visual representation of the key categories and topics that are happening in that paper.
But just before we close down our podcast, so new MSLs out in the field that are just going to go to their clinic and visit a KOL, what's the ultimate piece of advice, to wrap up, how to get it, to get access, to get an insight, to show value? What's the one piece of advice you'd like to tell them at the end of this podcast?
I would end by saying that they should definitely follow all of the advice on Medical Insiders and listen to that on the way over to the meeting.
Clinic.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And likewise, we'd also, we do suggest it everyone follow Patrina and follow the MSL Mastery. And of course, we all benefit from your trainings as well, and your podcasts on all your social media platforms. So Patrina, it was great to have you here today. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to host you in the Middle East very soon.
Oh, I would love that. Thanks again for having me. And I hope to see you guys all on LinkedIn.
Hopefully, looking forward. Have a great day. Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. I do have
Bye
to run,
bye.
Sharif. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank
All right.
you. Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.